Michael Wyant, W-Y-A-N-T is my last name. Michael is M-I-C-H-A-E-L.
Michael loves life. He's got a very big personality. He always has lots and lots of energy.
We're really, really close as far as brothers are. I mean, we fight, still fight. We always have. We still share a room, but we tell each other everything. We grow spiritually together, and he is my best friend.
I wouldn't say we were really close friends until high school. Our little group started with Zach, me, Josh, and Michael, and we just kind of grew more of friends into brothers.
You know, today I think society has kind of a skewed version of friendship, a skewed definition. You know, with me, Michael, Zach, and Mitchell, you know, we're deeper than friends. We have that connection where it's not just, you know, we're together for the fun times or we're together to have fun. We're really together, you know, to build each other up, to build ourselves as humans, build our character up. You know, and we're there for each other for anything. Anything we go through, we know that we can count on each other. And, you know, it's something deeper than just a friendship when you can have someone that's going to call you out when you mess up.
Michael has always been just full of life, full of joy. I remember when he was, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years old, anytime you would get a camera out, even before that, you would just pull a camera out and he would just smile. And of course his laugh, he's always laughing. So
yeah, he definitely has a loud, contagious laugh.
Very contagious.
Michael's laugh, where do I even start?
My laugh has been some people's joy and some people's hate for me.
His laugh just makes everyone's day. It brings a smile to my face when he laughs.
Michael's a really fun person to be around. He's always super happy and everything, and especially like when he laughs, everybody wants to be around that. People that aren't even like paying attention to your conversation or anything, they'll start laughing because he's laughing. Some people say it's obnoxious, but it's honestly, it's a signature.
If I get a good hard laugh, it is piercing. It carries through the room, and everyone in the room can hear it. Doesn't matter how big the room is.
It'll brighten your day. It'll make you, you know, get you in a better mood, things like that. And it's just a really uplifting thing to hear, especially like in midst of hard times. You hear Michael laugh and you think everything's going to be all right.
I think it's funny because it makes other people laugh, and that's why I love comedy and love laughter. That's why I enjoy being so funny, is because it brings me a lot of happiness just to see other people enjoy me or enjoy what I have to bring to them.
With Michael, growing up with Michael, I've observed that he's a very technical, methodical person. He has a passion, like he wants to know how things work, whether it be, you know, pencils, whether it be a car.
My interest with automobiles and motorcycles started, oh man, probably somewhere in the 5th grade. I just had friends that were talking about their grandpa's Lamborghini, which he doesn't have, but my friends talking about cars, and I started learning about cars, and my interest just kept growing and growing and growing into what it is today, and I've really become engrossed in car culture and car mechanics.
Well, Michael's liked cars for a long time, and I think he's the one that got me into cars.
My dad actually surprised me. I kept telling him, you know, I want a bike, I want to buy a bike, I've got the money, I want to save up, let me get a bike. And so he's like, well, before you get a bike, let's put you through the safety course. And so we went to Ukes Harley-Davidson, right off I-94 in Kenosha, and I took my rider's edge course. I actually failed it the first time. Right after I took my rider's edge course and got my permit and my license, my dad surprised me with a motorcycle, and it was just a little bitty 500cc single cylinders Buell Blast. And actually the last year that Buell made the Blast, they decided it was such a terrible bike that they would smash them and put them in these plexiglass cubes and sell them as coffee tables. And so that's the bike I had, the bike that the company decided was so bad that they're gonna smash into coffee tables.
Michael got a motorcycle when he was 16, and I was just itching, and I was doing a bunch of research on what I wanted to get. I was looking at street bikes, wanting to get a street bike when I turned 16 or 18 or whatever Dad allowed.
Josh just had his permit and had purchased his own motorcycle even back in the summer of him being 15 before he turned 16.
And so I got my first motorcycle and I couldn't even ride it yet. So
as soon as Josh turned 16, he got his riding permit, and he was entered for the first Rider's Edge course of the year. And so he was ready to go by the time we went on our trip.
I really knew nothing about his trip,
The last day of school before spring break, he was like, yeah, I'm going on a ride with my dad.
and that was that. I didn't really think much of it.
I know that was him, Josh, which is his brother, and his dad. That was their first full ride as a family because Josh is just of age to be able to ride a motorcycle by himself.
There were several weeks that we had been planning this particular weekend.
We had decided that we were gonna take a trip over spring break, but we didn't have it set in stone because we wanted to know what the weather was gonna be like and where we were gonna go.
The boys kept asking, Dad, where are we going to go? And I would always answer, well, I don't know. It just all depends on the weather.
we were thinking probably just do something around where we lived.
And as we got closer and closer, I realized that the weather was not good. And I looked east, I looked west, I looked south, and all around it was going to be rain that weekend.
The place that we went was the only place in the Midwest that there wasn't going to be rain that weekend.
So we had the bikes loaded up in a trailer, and the boys drove down after school, met me at work. I closed up the shop, and we drove 7.5 hours into southeast Ohio, a little town called Zanesville, Ohio, and we spent the night there.
So we were on the road, we had had a good day, we just stopped for lunch, and Dad picked out a map on the road that was just curvy and windy, and so we decided to take it, and we set off from lunch, and it was Dad in front, me in the middle, and Michael in back, and just big curve. It was almost 180 degrees, so it almost came all the way back around. I came around the curve, and I saw a pothole and a gash in the road.
The gash was 21 feet long, 3 inches wide, and 2 inches deep.
I didn't really pay attention to what it was. My years on the street and riding, I just knew to avoid it. But as I had been riding with Michael for the time that we had been on the road together, I was trained to look forward and look in my mirror, look forward, look in my mirror. So as we came around the curve, I looked forward and I looked in my mirror.
I was following basically the same line that he was, and Josh actually hit the gash in the road.
I was really close to going off the road. I was able to come out of it, and I came out of it, and Dad was a long ways in front of me, so I sped up.
And I saw Josh come through.
I didn't get to see it until it came out from under his bike.
And I looked forward, and I looked in my mirror, and I saw Michael coming through the curve, and I knew that he wasn't going to make it.
There was a very distinct 3 noises. The sound of the plastics hitting the pavement, the sound of my rear wheel hitting the guardrail, and the sound of my front wheel hitting the guardrail. When I was coming to the corner, I was leaning as hard as I could, and right before I hit the guardrail, there was just a little bit of gravel, and I was leaning so hard that just a little bit of gravel was enough to make me low side. So I remember just all in 6 seconds, just boom, boom, boom. I woke up before my dad got there. And I actually started to come to a little bit, and I thought, no, it's a dream. I'll go back to sleep. I'll wake up in the hotel room, be fine. I just thought I had a nightmare. And then I tried to go back to sleep, and that's when everything started to hurt. That's when I started feeling the pain. And I thought, crap. And then I woke up, and I started to smell the dirt. I could taste the dirt in my mouth, and everything started to hurt real bad. And the one thing that I remember thinking that after I actually woke up was, dang it, I didn't die.
I knew he was going down, but I was approaching a right-hand curve. We had just come through a left-hand curve, and so I lost visual of him.
Then I saw Dad's brake lights come on, and so I let off the throttle, not realizing he was slowing to a stop.
I grabbed my brakes with everything I had.
Once I realized he was stopping, I grabbed my brakes as hard as I could, and I knew I wasn't going to stop, but I couldn't turn because I was braking so hard, and I missed him. And I don't know how I missed him because he was stopped.
Josh flew past me on my right-hand side, and I turned around, and
Dad turned around and I looked, and Michael wasn't there. I was like, well, crap.
I heard Dad come with his bike, and he was trying to park his bike. And
I was in the dirt, and I knew not to ditch the bike. I knew I was going to have the bike. I had trouble getting it on the kickstand and getting it upright because of the earth was soft, and I was at an angle pitched the wrong direction.
he was yelling real loud because he was frustrated.
And I screamed because I heard Michael moaning. And I finally got it upright, and I ran across.
Dad came over to me and was just hysterical.
I see the blood coming from his nose. My first thought was he had internal injuries.
You get really hot if you're in an extreme amount of pain anyways, because your body is just so overwhelmed. You start to heat up. And I just wanted that helmet off so I could get some air. And he said, Michael, I can't take your helmet off. And I asked him 2 more times to take my helmet off, and he kept telling me no. And I knew why he couldn't take my helmet off, because he didn't know if I had a neck injury or not. I thought that I knew that I didn't have a neck injury, which I didn't. And so with my head downhill, I turned my head like this up to look at him, and I tilted my head up, and I said, take this helmet off of me. And so at that point, he knew that I didn't have a neck injury.
I get off my bike and I walk over there right as Dad was taking Michael's helmet off. And I did say to Dad, like, Dad, why are you taking his helmet off? And he just kind of told me to stop.
I could see a huge pool of blood already beginning to form underneath his left leg.
One thing that he did that definitely saved my life was he put a tourniquet on my leg.
I said, Josh, there's a shirt tucked underneath a bungee cord on my bike, and I usually take any loose gear and tuck it away in a bag, and for whatever reason, I had a long sleeve shirt and a bottle of water underneath the bungee cord. He brought me the t-shirt, and I tied off his leg. And at this point, I am downhill from him, and I'm looking at his right foot, which has no shoe or no sock on. It was ripped off in the accident. And I tied off his right leg. And Josh, from the other side of the guardrail, said, Dad. I said, what? He goes, come here. I go, what? And he said, come here. So I stood up and I walked around. He goes, I think you tied off the wrong leg.
And the reason that we think he put the tourniquet on the wrong leg was because my right foot, which was the foot that was not injured at all, my right foot didn't have a shoe or a sock on it, and I actually was wearing high top Converse.
So I tied off the left leg, and he yelled.
When he put it on, Michael's in a lot of pain.
First responder was there inside of about 10 minutes. As he began to work on Michael, I could see him talking to another guy, and that was there, another first responder, and he was trying to talk to him in a manner that I couldn't understand what he was saying, and he was trying to speak code to him, I guess. And he, at one point, he goes, "Bird, bird, bird." And I'm thinking, what is he talking about? And I quickly realized he was calling for a helicopter. And as he exposed his arm, he was no longer trying to speak code, and he called dispatch again, and he said, "We need the helicopter fast. We've got a partial double amputee." Both the police officers, who were just amazing with their compassion. So, "Mr. Wyant, are you okay? Are you okay to ride? You have over 70 miles to go to get to the hospital. We can find some way to get you there." And I said, "I'm okay." And I said, "Josh, it's your first day to ride on the street. You've never been on the interstate. Are you okay to ride?" And he goes, "I'm okay, Dad."
And so we took off to get there as soon as we could.
So we rode a little over 14 miles back to the interstate, and we headed south towards Charleston. We'd probably been on the interstate 6 or 7 miles.
And we were riding along the freeway, and my bike just turned off. It just quit.
Look ahead, look at my mirror. Josh was gone.
I was trying everything. I was like, it just all of a sudden was off. And I was just yelling, crying, because I knew my dad didn't see me. And if his other son was just gone, I knew he was going to freak out. And as soon as I stopped, I called him.
And my phone was, I was using it as my GPS, and it rang, and it was Josh. And I unhooked the wires, and I shoved it in my helmet.
And I just said, "Dad, I'm sorry," because I knew how much that was going to hurt him. But it was fine, and we
a 21-year-old young man was unloading the lawn tractor so he could mow his grandpa's grass. And I briefly told him the story. And I said, "Can you help us?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, will you meet us at the bottom of the exit ramp?" And he said, "Okay." And so I rode back up the exit ramp backwards, and I got behind Josh, and I just stiff-legged up against his rear peg and pushed him down the exit ramp. And we loaded Josh's bike up on the lawn trailer. And I looked at the young man and I said, do you have a place that we can take the bike or store it?" And he said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You see that red pickup right down there by that white building?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "That's my daddy's house. He's got a garage."
They loaded up my bike and they took it to their shop. They were super nice. They're Christians. It was really comforting.
The back seat on my bike's removable, and I didn't have it attached. And so we took the backpack that had been used under Michael's head, and we strapped it to the back fender of my bike, and Josh rode another 60-some miles on the interstate on that backpack. When we pulled off in Charleston, I was able to call and talk to Julie for the first time and explain to her what had happened. In the meantime, while Josh and I were on the motorcycle, she had called the hospital, and so she had a little bit of information that I didn't.
So we have 2 younger daughters, Rachel and Jenna, and the 3 of us were out shopping, and I was actually in the dressing room with Rachel, and Shane called, and he told me that Michael had been in an accident, and I was like, okay.
The very first time that I heard about Michael crashing his bike, it was through our little group chat, our squad group chat, if you will.
He sent out a chat saying that Michael crashed his bike, and I was like, oh, classic Michael.
He just messaged, hey guys, make sure you're praying for Mike. He crashed his motorcycle and broke his arm. And that was really all he said.
I think you told me that you thought his arm and his leg were broken. But he said, get as many people praying as you can. That was what really stuck with me.
And then I remember getting a call from his mom just after dinner. I could just hear the emotion in her voice, and knowing Miss Wyant for quite a while, I could tell there was something wrong. And I thought of Mike, but I wasn't sure if that was really what the problem was when she called me. And she ended up, telling me Michael crashed his motorcycle, and at that point, there were so many different versions of what happened to him, just because the nurses said one thing, the ambulance guy said another, Mr. Wyant said another to her on the phone, and it was all over the place. Nobody really knew what happened.
I broke 7 bones. I had 7 surgeries. I couldn't tell you what the sequence of surgeries was. I had three hairline fractures, 3 displaced fractures, and then the head of my humerus was broke completely off. All the hairline fractures were in my fibula, my ulna, my right ulna towards my wrist. The head of my radius towards my elbow was fractured. My femur was broke completely through. It was displaced, so it broke really high, almost in my butt is where it broke, and it broke like this and wedged itself up into my glute. My hip is broken, and it's displaced. It's still displaced. They never fixed that. They said functionally that's not going to make a difference, and so that's actually still displaced. I call it my love handle. I had that trauma, that laceration to the calf, and then I had a 4-compartment fasciotomy, and so I have 2 scars that run the length of my shin on either side. And just them cutting that open and then leaving it open for days and then sewing it back up again. That was a lot of trauma for my lower leg to take, and so my muscles are still really, really tight, and my tendons are still really, really short.
I kind of freaked out a little bit, I think, because I heard just the seriousness in his voice, and then not knowing, it was just hard being so far away, and I was thinking, I can't get there.
I didn't realize the severity of the situation until after I got off work, when I found out about the details and the severity of how bad it was. But I was pretty shaken up. When I got off work, I felt sick,
By the time I got home, my friend Rachel was there, and she stayed with the girls, and I was able then to go. And at that point, I wasn't sure if I was going to go or if I was going to stay. I didn't know how bad it was, and while I was trying to decide what to do, Shane called me, and he's like, you got to get down here.
For spring break, I was going to Costa Rica with my family. So like the day after his accident, I was on my way. I was on a plane going to Costa Rica, which, I don't know, I really wanted to see him, but it was kind of good to just go there and kind of try to keep my mind off of things.
Michael's family has always been very close to mine, and I knew if something like that had happened for me, that they would do everything in their power to, be there for me, be there for my family, and take care of me. And, being so close with Michael, I realized in that point, I need to be there for him. If not me, Zach, Mitchell, then who's going to be there for him? I want to go support their family because they've done so much for me. And I told my parents I wanted to go. He was in West Virginia, and we're up in Wisconsin, so that's a pretty far drive. I just told him I need to go see him. His mom said it was bad, so and at first my parents kind of were like, no, we don't want you to do that. It's something that we're not comfortable with. And I was actually planning to take one of my parents' cars and just drive into the night. I've told them this and things like that, but at that point, I was just so frustrated. I went down to my room, I was throwing stuff around. I was just really mad at the whole circumstance. I wanted to be there for my friend. And then I ended up texting with our mutual friend Zach, and he said that he was going to go down regardless and that he would pick me up if I wanted to go. Turns out his dad was going to go with him, and long story short, my parents were okay with me going as long as his dad was going. We were still in high school and they were worried about that. So, we got in the car at like 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and we just drove through the night.
When my friends got there, that just helped me to keep going, because I was able to get out of the hospital because I knew Mom and Dad didn't want to leave Michael, and I didn't want to ask them to.
Me and Zach, we wanted to kind of get Josh away from the whole thing. That'd be such a nightmare, to be living through that for days and weeks. And we took him out. We took him out to a mall that was in the area. Charleston isn't the nicest area, but they have a kind of a downtown mall.
We just went and drove. We went to the mall. We just laughed, had a good time, and we talked about it. But just to be able to get out, and it was just refreshing. With my friends there, and they're my brothers. I die for them, they die for me, and they're just, they're my best friends in the world.
I called a few of my friends, but then people started calling me, and I remember one of my friends said, "Can I put it on Facebook?" I'm like, "No, don't put it on Facebook. We don't know what's going on. Don't put this on Facebook. Just tell people to pray." And she said, "Well, Julie, that's the fastest way to get it out." I said, "I don't want it on Facebook." And she's like, "Okay, well, I'll just text everybody in my phone. I'll just send out a text to everybody." And then, by the end of the evening, people were putting it on Facebook, and I thought, well, it's out there, so I'll just use this as a tool to communicate with people. And it was amazing because there were so many people reaching out to us and praying for Michael, and we just saw God's hand of provision over it all. And on my way down, people have said, "Oh, you should have called me, I would have went with you." And it was just really good for me to be by myself. I prayed out loud, I cried, I screamed, I talked on the phone. I didn't have to worry about who was listening to me. If my kids were in there with me, I could just really be real and honest with God and my friends too. And so it was really, by the time I got to West Virginia, I was in a really good place, even though I didn't exactly know what was going on with Michael. I knew it was alive.
I remember, we walked into the ER, and Mr. Wyant, he's one of my role models in life, and I walk in there and I see him with tears in his eyes and everything, and he just gave me this big hug, and I was scared,
Well, walked in and he was in the hospital bed, hooked up to every possible imaginable tube coming out of every orifice of his body, and he was out of it. He was sedated.
Just seeing him in the hospital, that was when I broke down. That was the first time it really set in, was that this is a big deal.
I was able to see Michael after he came out of surgery. He was all drugged up. And I was able to, talk to him and, hold his hand and stuff. And I remember I walked in and, he squeezed my hand even though he was really out of it. And he knew it was me. And, I remember him opening his eyes and he would look around the room. And he couldn't really focus on anything. Then he would catch my face and just kind of lock onto me for a few seconds before closing his eyes.
I was in STICU for 7 days. And then I was in step-down ICU for 3 days. And step-down is like ICU, but it's just not as monitored. A lot happened in ICU. I remember being intubated. That was terrible. One of the nurses that I had was a really nice guy, but did not need to be an ICU nurse. He was always singing and carrying on, and he would tap on my bed. And when you have 7 broken bones, and one of them is your femur, you don't want anyone anywhere near your bed. And so just that guy was bad.
So it was Monday morning when they were taking him in for the 4th surgery, he was mouthing, like he was trying to mouth something to us, and I couldn't figure out what he was trying to say. And so the nurse, he said, "Do you want to try to write?" And he shook his head yes. And so he, on a piece of paper with a Sharpie, he wrote, "God is good."
Him saying God is good, it was just very, very relaxing for me.
I was just amazed. I'd always known Michael was strong, in his faith physically, but when he wrote that, I knew everything was going to be all right.
I wasn't there when he wrote God is good, but hearing that from Julie and hearing her talk about how he was able to communicate and just begin to see his personality, how it was still intact, it was huge.
It was amazing, to see Michael still had that in him. And I was just so thankful for the Wyants as my friend.
I was just a proud mom, like he sees God is good, and he's like seeing the silver lining in this, and he's not focusing on the negative. There's so many things to be upset and sad and unsure about, and he was saying God is good.
Michael's mom posted, the God is good, the writing, and she said what happened.
But I had no expectations of it. I was just wanting everybody to know that, hey, Michael's still with us, like he's still Michael.
I just thought, they're gonna get lots of likes, lots of shares.
It was an inspiration to everyone who liked that post.
I forget who it was some adult that we know ended up putting it as our profile picture. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So then, a few other people did it, and then I was like, why don't I do it? So then everyone just started putting God is good as their profile picture.
Well, when everybody started changing their profile pictures, I was like, whoa, I guess I should change mine too.
Pretty much, there was everybody in our school. We went to a small private school, and everyone in the school was just God is good, God is good, God is good. Everyone's profile picture was God is good.
And it really grew to something that I didn't think it would have. Like, I knew there was people praying, but then Mom just said there's so many people praying this church. There's people in India, there's people all across the United States. Being
so far away from home, it was like everybody's reaching out, giving you a hug when they did that.
There was a family and a few girls from the volleyball team at our school that thought it would be an awesome idea to get a fundraiser together to show support for the Wyants. And they ended up making these shirts with the God is good symbol.
She's like, we want to do something for you guys. We don't know what to do, but we were talking about like turning that God is good into a t-shirt or something. Would you be okay with that? And I said, I said, yeah. And she's like, well, could we were talking about doing this Wyant Strong, and I'm like, you guys, I totally trust you. I don't really have headroom for this, so whatever you want to do, just do it. She's like, okay, but we just want to know like what Michael's favorite colors are, and he told me gray. I'm like, your favorite color is gray? He's like, yeah. I said, well, what would be like your second favorite color? Blue?
I thought, okay, our close friends will buy them, it's kind of cool, and they probably won't wear them very much.
The shirts exploded, man. It was insane.
And they sold, 500 or 600 t-shirts?
I remember one day, I was at work and somebody came through with a Wyant Strong shirt on, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I've never met this person before, but they're supporting Michael.
After I realized what was happening, I kept checking. I was like, wow, 200, 300, 400. Like, Shane, do you see this? All of the proceeds that came from selling the t-shirts just went to a fund for Michael.
Still astounds me how fast Michael recovered.
It's truly a miracle that he didn't have an arm, like it was dangling by nerves, basically.
He got to the point where first he was walking with a cane like that, a few weeks after it happened, maybe it was a month or two, but it was just insane. All of a sudden he comes to school with a cane. Next thing you know, he's walking without his cane. Everyone's like, Michael, you gotta use your cane. He's like, no, I'm fine. And he's walking around without his cane. He had an arm brace, and take the arm brace off and he'd start, moving his arm. I was like, oh my gosh, this is, he's going crazy fast. And then he was saying, like, the doctors didn't think that he could open past a certain angle with his arm, and that was like something like, it was a certain angle. And then he comes and he shows me, he's like, dude, look at my arm's almost all the way straight. And I was like, what is going on? Doctors didn't think he'd ever be able to do that again. And that was only a few months after that had happened. And I think the big moment for me, seeing him recover and everything was, we went down, me, Zach, and Mitchell and Michael all went down to his lake house over the summer. And Michael hadn't water skied, which is another thing he really likes to do. He hadn't water skied since the accident. And, we were water skiing or trying to water ski. And then Michael was like, hey, I want to try. Somebody pull me. I'm like, okay, go for it, I guess. Very first time, he gets up like he'd done it 1,000 times before. And he's tearing up the water with one hand, gripping with one hand.
What we saw after the accident was seeing a much more caring, compassionate side of Michael come out, and to see him begin to look at, care about, think about others much more so than he had in the past.
I'd say right after the crash, he was different. I would say he was a little more sad, but it's good to see him. He's pretty much the same as he was before.
With his crash, just really reassured us that, we're friends for life, man. You hear all the time about kids that are friends in high school and they break apart during college or later in life, and when I hear about that, it's like you have to make a decision. You hear in church, you hear everywhere that love is a decision. It's not just an emotion you feel. And we have no problem saying, like, be on the phone, hey, I love you, man, because love is a decision.
Before the crash, Michael and I were kind of at odds for a couple months, but I feel like through all of this we've really grown together a lot, and I think that he would agree in that we've grown together just through all the struggles and just with our family, sometimes fighting because we're stressed and stuff, that Michael and I have really pulled together through all of this.
You don't realize how much you need your friends until you almost lose them.
I think we are still very much in the throes of it. I think we're still in process. It took me a long time to get back to normal life. I'm a small business owner, and I was able to step away from work for the better part of 6 weeks, and it was my children saying, Dad, you got to get back to life. And I really struggled with that. And my whole family has told me, and I'm just really beginning to see it, that my whole family has said, Dad, you're not the same. You're not as jovial. You don't have that laid-back nature that you used to have. And I'm not sure I'll ever be the same. But it's still in process. I believe that it's deepened our faith. I believe that we're all growing closer together, although there are still times that it is extremely difficult. But God is good, and we have seen glory being given to God through so much of it in ways that we never expected, And as I really reflect on that, I realize that it was seeing God move so many ways, especially in the 19 days that we were in hospital in West Virginia, that kept us inspired and pressing on, and being able to give God the glory in all of that. Not a path that we would have chosen. It sure was a blessing to be a part of, all of God's blessing that was bestowed on us during that time.